I think I should start this by clarifying what I define as a future for certain teams in the NFL. Here's how I'll define this. You should at least have something to look forward to in the 2022 NFL season to say that you have a future. So the Seattle Seahawks, I'm sorry, I've been bagging on your team for the last couple of videos now, but your team has nothing to look forward to this year. You have no future. Now, if you are the Jacksonville Jaguars and you have something to look forward to, such as the development of Trevor Lawrence, you have a future. If you're the Detroit Lions and you're trying to figure out how this team's going to mesh and come together this year after 3-13-1 season that has a lot of the vets upset about how they played last year, you have something to look forward to. You have a future. Chicago Bears fans, there's no really other way to put it other than you don't have a future. You have nothing to look forward to this year. Really, outside of the couple teams I've already mentioned, I think the few teams that qualify as a team that really don't have much to look forward to this year, I think it's the Seahawks, I think it's the Bears, I think it's the Giants, I think it's the Vikings, the Browns. I mean, depending on how you view the Browns, I'm looking forward to seeing them suck after the contract they gave Deshaun Watson. The New York Jets were on the verge of almost having nothing to look forward to this year after Zach Wilson injured his knee, but now that it's just a meniscus tear and not a torn, completely gone meniscus, it's just something they got to trim. They at least have something to look forward to this year. So yeah, just to wrap that whole spiel up, there's really only a few teams that don't have something to look forward to this year, and they're not going to get talked about in this video. So really, for a future in the NFL, it's one of the most commonly talked about things is that the average career for an NFL player is about 3 years. And I think that's really what you look within as a window for what you want your team to either develop into, compete as a champion during that time, compete as just a really good team during that time, develop players, whatever it is. It's usually a 3-year stretch that kind of sets the tone for the next 5 to 10 years after that. So you would really look at this question of who has the best future in the league right now and say, in 3 years, who could you really be expecting to be either A, competing for titles, winning titles, or just be a double-digit win team consistently in the future? Now, there are a lot of teams that are unknown at this current juncture. I would say the Miami Dolphins, the Washington football team, somewhat to some extent the Green Bay Packers, the Pittsburgh Steelers, the Baltimore Ravens, the Cincinnati Bengals, even teams like the New Orleans Saints, even teams like the Las Vegas Raiders, even teams like the Kansas City Chiefs, who we think is one of the best teams in the NFL. They have some weird questions going into this season. Are some of these teams going to take the next step? Are some of these teams going to continue playing at the level that they're playing at? Are these teams going to fall off and just completely fall into the oblivion of terrible NFL teams? I'll tell you one thing for sure. One of the teams that has easily one of the best futures is the Buffalo Bills. Now, that's easy to say after an 11-6 season last year and looking ahead to a season this year in which they're considered one of the best teams in the AFC, if not the number one team after this year's offseason. Adding Von Miller, getting another year of Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs, just overall improving the roster, getting Sean McDermott another year under his belt in the playoffs. This team is built to do something right away, but they're also built to do something in the future. And a lot of that has to revolve around the fact that they have Josh Allen, the best, if not the second best, young quarterback in the NFL. The one thing that does make me tread a little bit lightly with saying that they're the number one future in the NFL is the fact that I don't know what the passing game looks like without Stephon Diggs. And the running back situation, not only has it been bad since Josh Allen has been there, it's been bad enough for the coaches to accept just not running the ball during the playoffs or during games where they have to be able to run the ball. They just abandoned the run throughout times during the season last year. And that's not the mark of an incredible football team. They can definitely pass it with the best of them. And because of how good Josh Allen is, not only with his arm, but on the ground as well, he limits the fact that they don't have a good real running back to give them those 1,000+ yard seasons. And that's going to be something that's going to be tough on Josh Allen, on his body, on his mental game. It's going to be something that Buffalo is going to have to for sure work around. before Josh Allen gets hurt or before he's out of his prime. I do have to give some love to my favorite team in the NFL, the Houston Texans. I think I keep it pretty real with this team. I think I do not go very far and beyond to express how much I like this team as my favorite team. But look, we're going to go 5-12 this year, right? We're going to go 6-11. We're going to go, if we go 7-10, that would be like winning the championship for this franchise. As long as the Houston Texans, as long as Davis Mills as the starting quarterback for the Houston Texans wins more games than Deshaun Watson does as the starting quarterback for the Cleveland Browns, I will be happy. That is what I am looking forward to this year. On top of the fact that I want to see Davis Mills develop into the starter long term for this team because it's the perfect situation for him. It's weird to say that given how bad the Texans have been as a front office, as a franchise, as a management, as a coaching staff. Shoot, the players have sucked for the last few years now as well. But now there's guys there that you can actually get behind. I love Brandon Cooks, man. I love Davis Mills. I love Derek Stingley. I love what the offensive line has developed into the last year and a half. I love what's happened on the defensive line. I love what's happened with the secondary. I love what's going on. And for that reason alone, I think they have a really good future. I don't think it's going to be a future that we see as very bright within the next 1 to 2 seasons. But 3 years from now, when everything else gets figured out around Davis Mills, around the high overall draft picks that we're getting right now, things are going to look really good for the Houston Texans. I think the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are the perfect example of having everything ready. Look, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers had a stretch there where they could have said, you know what, Jameis Winston? You know what? We're tired of all these interceptions, man. We're going to trade you. We're going to get rid of you. We're going to have a terrible season, and we're going to draft the next quarterback. You know what they did? They stuck around with an above-average team, with an elite skill group, with a very, not just good defense, but the best run defense in the NFL, on top of a young secondary developing, with draft picks that they were going to bring in, with a linebacking core that was better than anybody in the NFL, and with a rotation on that defensive line that, again, was better than anybody in the NFL by the time that Tom Brady decided to take his talents to Tampa Bay. I really don't rule out the possibility of once Tom Brady probably retires after this year, or God forbid he plays 2 or 3 more years and is a Super Bowl caliber quarterback for that long, there's a good chance that once Tom Brady is gone in Tampa Bay, they'll be able to replace him. Now, I'm not saying that there's a replacement for Tom Brady, but I think Tom Brady has laid the foundation for Tampa Bay to say, hey, you know, these quarterbacks who are unhappy, if you want to come to Tampa Bay, we already did it with Tom Brady. Why not come down to Tampa Bay, do the exact same thing he did, bring a championship to us, be the guy, make that next step in your hopeful Hall of Fame career. They easily have one of the best futures ahead of them. They have youth in their skill group positions. Not only do they have youth, they have top-tier talent in the league at a lot of those positions. They've got an offensive line that has young pieces that are ready to anchor that offensive line for years to come. And the defense, it just seems like it's always going to be good, the way that defense has been constructed. And what's in place in Tampa Bay is something that's really strong. I just got to say it, man. What's keeping the Patriots from winning the Super Bowl this year? I mean, really, what's really keeping them back? This is a team I could easily see the New England Patriots being 3-5 by the end of their 8th game. And then at the end of the season, they're hoisting the Super Bowl with Mac Jones winning Super Bowl MVP with like 222 yards and 3 touchdowns. There's such a world where that happens, and it all is because of Belichick, and it all is because of this coaching staff, and it's all like, I think people really underestimate the New England Patriots this year. Like, everybody's calling for Mac Jones to have one of those sophomore slump kind of years after a really elite rookie performance last year. And there really isn't a reason for it. They improved on the wide receiver core. They improved. They improved. And I get it. They lost Josh McDaniels, and I think that's the biggest loss anybody suffered all year. Was losing Josh McDaniels was a huge loss for New England. But it's kind of like, Josh really struggled outside of New England when he left. And he came back, picked the reins back up, and he led an elite offense. But he had also the greatest quarterback of all time at a period where he was playing some of the best football of all time, week in and week out. So, I'm not saying that Mac Jones is Tom Brady 2.0. I'm not saying that Josh McDaniels was only good as an offensive play caller because of Tom Brady. I'm thinking here that it's time for Mac Jones to find his offensive coordinator. I think Josh McDaniels was really good with Tom Brady, and maybe he didn't work the same way with Mac Jones. And that's not something that should be very surprising. So now that Mac Jones kind of has a fresh start in New England, which is weird to say because he's already been there a year, but it's a bit of a fresh start with this coaching staff. He's got a new guy in his helmet talking to him every play, saying different things every play now. And while it's going to take some time to adjust for the New England Patriots, do not be surprised if within not only this year, but within the next few seasons, they are hoisting a Super Bowl trophy. I do think I would be a little bit upset with myself if I don't say something about the Atlanta Falcons. I think what's set up for Atlanta is a really easy path to being one of those worst to first teams from this year to next year. I think, you're going to start Marcus Mariota for 17 games, hopefully. That's the plan this year. You're hoping that Marcus Mariota can get you to the playoffs. You're hoping that he plays by far not only the best year of his career, but the best quarterback play in his division. And you're asking Marcus Mariota to be a top 6 quarterback in a conference that has names like Matthew Stafford, Jimmy Garoppolo, Dak Prescott, Jalen Hurts, Aaron Rodgers, Kirk Cousins, Jared Goff, Tom Brady, Jameis Winston. It's a tough conference. Even the guys who are in the middle of the pack of the NFC in terms of their conference rankings at the quarterback position, all of those guys are really good quarterbacks. There's maybe 3 bad quarterbacks in the NFC this year. And you're going to be asking Marcus Mariota to be better than a lot of them. That's probably not going to happen, right? So if we don't see at least 5 or 6 games, the last 5 or 6 games of the year started by Desmond Ridder for the Atlanta Falcons, I would be heavily surprised. And this team should be competing for the number 1 pick. They really should be. Not to replace the quarterback, because I think Desmond Ridder has shown some moments, even though he's taken a little bit longer to get a grasp of this offense, which shouldn't be that big of a surprise. It's been good to see him play well with the chances he got in the preseason and with the chances he's going to continue to get during the season and during the preseason. But they're still going to be one of the worst teams in the NFL. Defensively, they're not good. Offensively, they're not good. And that's going to take time. And hopefully during that time, they can add another elite skill position player. They're going to get Calvin Ridley back next year as well. And the time now is for this team to increase their depth, their talent, and their confidence within their own team.